also work for Johnson & Johnson. And we are gathering today because we are February started, and we started Phenotype February for the Odyssey community. First of all, I want to really thank all of you for signing up to be part of this year Phenotype February. We are very, very excited, and we started the work so that it makes it so Anna, myself, Jamie, and Gautam and Asya went through some of the activities that we want to do in a collaboration manner to learn from it and see how we can do it. So we cover a little bit of the work for this week. So I'm not very anxious that it's February 5th and today we're giving orientation, because we kind of took the first example, went through it to see how we can collaborate on the rest of the work for the rest of the month. So what we want to cover today is, in addition to me, I'll be speaking today, but really working hard is Anna. I think you all know Anna, and also Jamie Weaver, Asya, and Gautam. Together, we're trying to kind of coordinate this work so we get the best out of this month and have something to learn and share with the community. So we did have a lot of people that sign up on the forum, and I'm happy to see many people joining today. We have 42, so I'm hoping everybody who signed also joined. One thing, just housekeeping, when you all signed up, we took your emails and we added you to the Phenotype Working Group, because that is the way we're gonna have all our documents to share. Now that you are a member of the Phenotype Working Group in Odyssey, you will have access to the team channel of the working group that gives you access to the files, which we're going to be sharing documents and doing all the hands-off activities and to complete the study. So you should all have access. I want to make sure if you all go to your teams, in that email that was sent to you for this meeting, we shared some links. Those should work. Is everybody on the call had already filled the form that Anna shared, the Google form to contribute, to be part of Phenotype February? Yep. Anybody who's showing up today that didn't fill the form? Perfect. This means all of you should have access to the teams. Now, does everybody have access to Phenotype February 24 on Teams folder? If anybody doesn't have access, please reach out for me or Gautam or Anna. Okay, Jelly is not sure. Anna, or Gautam, could you paste the link of the folder to see if everybody can click on, and if everybody doesn't have access, so Anna will put the link now. If any of you doesn't have access, as soon as we finish this call today, please reach for one of us, and we'll make sure that you have access. Or if you don't have access, put your email on the chat, and Gautam will add you to the group, and that will guarantee your access. Okay. Now that we know that everybody have access, let's just give a quick reminder for what we're trying to do in this Phenotype February. So our goal is to understand what is the current practices in the field and how much researcher introduce variability in the process of phenotype development and evaluation. In specific, we're going to do a collaborative study in an objective to assess the heterogeneity in 3 different things: phenotype definitions, representations of these definitions, and evaluation methods across published observational studies. And we're really focusing on the last 4 years because we realize there's a lot of published studies and it will be too hard to try to cover the entire universe. So we're going to focus on published studies in the last 4 years. We're going to also focus on 4 conditions that the community has voted on our last Tuesday call. As a reminder, we're going to focus on the heterogeneity in 3 main things when it comes to phenotyping. That is the phenotype definition component itself. So what is the definition? The representation structure. What is it that people report when they say how they define their definition, their conditions that are covered in these studies, and then what methods did they use for validation. So the 4 conditions based on our voting from last Tuesday, also people were able to vote in the Google form itself. We end up with Alzheimer having the highest vote, which we will cover week 1. And that's the little piece of work that we have covered already since we are in February 5th today. The second one is small cell lung cancer and non-small cell lung cancer. So they are technically 2 different definitions, but we're going to work on them. And because they're both kind of a definition of exclusions of each other, so you can't really phenotype small cell lung cancer without defining non-small lung cancer and excluding those. So we're tackling both definitions as 2 different phenotypes, but the exclusion of one is included in each. And the third one is major depression disorder. And the fourth one is pulmonary arterial hypertension. Just to be very specific on those 4, for Alzheimer's disease, we are interested on Alzheimer's disease itself. That does not include other forms of dementia. So we're really phenotyping people with Alzheimer's disease. I talk about lung cancer. For MDD, we are talking about major depression disorder that does not include milder form of depression. We're trying to phenotype people with major depression disorder, not including milder version of depression. And for pulmonary arterial hypertension, since pulmonary hypertension itself is really a umbrella term that covers 5 different diseases based to the WHO that are distinct of each other, we're going to focus on pulmonary arterial hypertension, which is group 1 under PH. So we're being very specific. For the sake of documentation and maybe publishing our work, we will provide 1-line definition or 2 lines to be very specific on what we mean clinically by these definitions, since this is one area of confusion and one area of variability. I found personally in Alzheimer, I pulled all these papers on Alzheimer, and then when I went into the paper, I find that 30% of them were talking actually about dementia. And they're calling the paper phenotype of Alzheimer, but they're really including all kinds of dementia. And that's one version of one source of variability with definitions. What is the clinical idea you're actually trying to define or capture? So for us to be clear, we're gonna create kind of very brief documentation of what these things are. In the Odyssey community, we like to write clinical descriptions, but we're not gonna go for this exercise. Just to be clear, to assert what we mean, Gautam and others are taking the lead in just writing 5 or 6 sentences to be clear of the definition from a clinical perspective that will go into like the introduction of the paper. Does that make sense to everybody? And does the 4 definitions clear what we mean by each of them, at least from a clinical common standard? Okay, so here is the flow of work. It's going to look a little bit complicated, but it's not. From a high level, there are 3 buckets of things that need to be accomplished. And the first bucket is the bucket of the literature work, the literature search. And we divided those into 4 different tasks. The second bucket is the atlas replication and the cohort diagnostic component. Because to be able to assess what are those what kind of people or patients or subjects these definitions are capturing, our method of doing that is by replicating those definitions in data sources that we have access for, and then describe the patients that these definitions are capturing and describe the differences between them depending on the definition. We're going to also, and to do that, we're going to use our tool Atlas to replicate logics and concept sets that are reported in those papers. And we're going to use cohort diagnostics as a mean to explore the patient's characteristics that these patients identify. We're going to also attempt to do phenotype Phevaluator to actually estimate the characteristics of these definitions. Now we understand that Phevaluator might require a certain number of subjects, and not maybe all data partners are able to run this, but we're going to attempt. And Jamie and Joel are taking the lead on trying to package Phe-evaluated and cohort diagnostics into an R package that can be shared with collaborators who are able to access data and replicate data. They replicate these definitions and the patient's characteristics and the Phe-evaluated estimates in their data source. However, to be clear, you do not need to be a data partner. You do not have to have access to be part of this. We have already the data sources that we and J&J have access to that we will do this exercise on. However, if you are a collaborator that have access to patient-level data, it would be an opportunity for you to run cohort diagnostics and Phe-evaluated and be part of the study as a data partner. Okay, the third bucket of activities is that we're gonna synthesize the result and disseminate. There is one form of dissemination that happened in Phenotype February, where every Tuesday call, we're gonna give high-level summary of where we are and what we learned already. So that's gonna be dissemination that happened concurrently with the exercise, and that happens every Tuesday. We get 20 minutes to report what we learned and where we are. And then the full dissemination will take the form of a paper. Many people actually indicated in their form, in their Google form, that they're interested in be parting on the drafting manuscript activities. And the way we're going to do this is our introduction and our method section can start right away. However, our results and synthesis will probably need to wait till we digest a lot of the heterogeneity we're going to find and how we're going to represent that. But those who are interested in writing manuscripts, we can start right away with the introduction and the method. And maybe Anna gonna kind of manage those kinds of activities as we get closer to have something with us and see who would like to start this right away. Okay. I'm going to cover today the literature search tasks. We did this for Alzheimer, and I'm going to use that as a demo. I color-coded those tasks to indicate certain things. Things that are blue are things that people can contribute to, taking responsibility of finishing a task that is in blue. Some of these tasks are kind of divide and conquer, so there's multiple people who will do that blue task. The red tasks are tasks that those who join to just observe and not necessarily contribute, you're also welcome. And those red steps are point of observation. So these are things that are going to happen on a public way. We're going to complete those tasks in public, and you can just join the call and listen. You don't have to contribute. So that's just to clarify which things that we actually want people to do things and which things you can just tag along and listen. Any questions so far? Okay, so I'm gonna take Alzheimer as a demo. You can all follow me on the Teams channel on the link that Anna put, where you can see the documents. And hopefully my team doesn't crash, and it's a little slow, but hopefully it works. Okay, so the first step in our method, in our approach, is we're gonna identify the study that reported or implemented or validated phenotype definition for Alzheimer in our first week. We're gonna do this using a standardized query. So we're not saying go and look whatever papers you find. We have produced a step-by-step document that goes of how you're going to do this in PubMed. This step is just finding the papers, filter them, take away the things that are clearly not relevant, and end up with a list of maybe 20 to 30 published papers in the last 4 years talking about, including phenotype definitions for Alzheimer. This is a task. The input of it is the search strategy. The output of it is a text folder that includes that PubMed produce once you save your search. And that's it. So it's a task of one person for each disease. For Alzheimer, I did that already, or we did that already. So I'm going to go to my Teams. Here is the phenotype working group, and here is Phenotype February of 2024. We have created folder for each disease, for each week, and here is Alzheimer. The first bucket of work are all the tasks for literature review, and that's only what we have completely finished for Alzheimer. So you'll see that folder exists in every single disease and a subfolder or disease. So the first document I refer to is step to conduct a literature review. That is one task that needs to be done 4 times, now 3 times if we remove Alzheimer, that we need a volunteer to do that task. And we have talked about who could do this task from the list of the people we have shared, and maybe Anna and Asia can suggest that if we have the people on the call today. Okay, so here is step by step. Here is our search strategy. And there's the step of what we need to do. I can quickly replicate that right now. So you can, the way we're doing this, we go to PubMed. I had it open somewhere. To be able to share search results out of PubMed, you need to log in. And I assume everybody knows how to log in, create an account in PubMed. Okay, so we'll do advanced search. We will use mesh terms. We don't need to know the mesh terms for anything. You can actually get it out of PubMed itself. And you can type Alzheimer, if I know how to type it. Alzheimer. Please. And then you do add. And then you go back to the document where we search the search strategy, and you can copy starting here. So this is a query that Patrick and people in J&J helped him in as well.
So when you copy, you don't need the the and there.
Yeah, hold on. I'm just gonna. So you do all field, and you copy it. Oh, you mean when I copied it, I had the and. It actually ignores it. It doesn't care. It tells you it ignored the and, even if you made a mistake. Okay. And then you do and then you do the search. And it goes. So for Alzheimer, it's going to find me 662. That's why we are limiting to the last 4 years. And then we're doing the last 4 years. That will cut it down to some 247, which is still a lot. But this query is supposed to pull up studies that are observational studies and specifically include terms like having ICD-10 or 9, so reporting codes. And then in the first step, that first person task is to scan these studies by only looking at the abstracts and removing things that are clearly not relevant. So that would include studies that are on registries, clinical trials, anything that clearly not going to include or report on a phenotype definition for Alzheimer in this case. Once that task is completed, we are asking that in PubMed, you can actually save and send, share your result search after you scan. And you scan by selecting, once you scan, you can select the paper you want. Now it kicked me out. Come on. Oh, sorry. General. The files will come up in a minute. Oh, here we go. Files. Okay. Once you select the papers after screening out the ones that are not relevant, you click Save and Share in PubMed. And once you do Save Text File, it will download for you a text file that includes the final papers that you selected as relevant paper. With asking that you save that text folder in the designated subfolder, and PubMed gonna give it a name. So it will say Alzheimer summary, whatever your search strategy was in text. Out of that, all the task is to put it there, and that will finish that first task, nothing else. The second task, let me go back to the slides. In the second task, now we're gonna use those studies to abstract the information. And for that, we're gonna use two templates. And there's two steps that we're gonna do in parallel together. But obviously, in the case of Alzheimer, for example, I ended up with 25 studies. So there are 25 studies that need these tasks to be replicated. So here's where we're gonna divide and conquer. So the way we're gonna divide and conquer is that out of that text folder, we're gonna create a task list, which every entry in that task list is one of the papers that were selected. And that will look like this. It will be once the person who finished the literature to identify studies and to put that text folder, we're gonna create out of this a table that looks like this. And this is where we would ask people to sign up their name to just look at one study or two studies, whatever you're capable of or have time for. In Alzheimer case, I went ahead and went and opened each of these studies and abstracted the information related to the phenotype. But this will be for every.
As I think it should add at this time, the people who should sign up should have access to the full text articles. Some of these are free and publicly available. Some of them may be within a paywall. If it is within a paywall, you please do not share it publicly, because that would be a violation of some licensing agreement.
Absolutely. We do not expect for recent publications, a lot of them to be limited access. We expect a lot of these things to be open access, at least in our experience in J&J. A lot of these papers were actually open access, especially recent years. But if something was not open access, please do not share anything that violates any of those conventions or agreements. So when you'll open the paper, there are three scenarios. You open the paper, it's totally relevant, it has phenotype definition, and you can abstract that information. I'll show a template where we're gonna abstract that information. And then you go ahead, you complete it, you abstract the information, put it in a template, and you mark it done. And we know that it's done, it's already in the abstraction form. There are two things we're going to ask you to abstract. We're going to ask you to abstract information in its structured template on the phenotype. But we also, because we want to try to assess the representation of those phenotypes, we're going to literally ask you to copy and paste that paragraph that talked about the phenotype into another Word document that then we're going to do a document review using like qualitative method to identify heterogeneity in the reporting or representation. So you're going to open the paper. There are going to be two things you're going to complete. One is the literature review abstract form that I'm going to go over, and the other one is an open Word document that we're also calling a template. We're calling phenotype representation, that you're going to copy the entire bulb of text or any supplement material and just put it in that Word document that people will then digest. The other scenario is you open the paper and you don't have access to. Just type here, no access, and move on. The third scenario is you find the paper, but it's actually a false positive. It doesn't have a phenotype. It doesn't actually report the phenotype. Doesn't include any information about the phenotype other than we defined Alzheimer as one diagnosis on Alzheimer. That's it. No information whatsoever. Or actually doesn't even say that. In that case, also, it's a false positive. You say irrelevant yeah, you can say just irrelevant, and then you move to the next one. It's really up to you of if you have this on average going through this takes about 22 minutes if the paper has a lot of information on the phenotypes that you need to abstract. It should not take more than 20 minutes in the most complicated papers. And it could take 5 minutes if the paper, like most papers, just said we defined Alzheimer as an ICD of G34 or whatever the code was. And then that's it. So we need people, because we're expecting about 20 to 30 papers for every of those 4 conditions, and we will need people to sign up for that literature review. I'm going to quickly go over the form, and that will be the last thing on that literature review tasks. So here is how the literature review template look like, abstraction template look like. Literature review abstract, that's how it's abstraction, that's how it's called in all your subfolders. For those who ever done any literature review, it's very similar. So there are 2 tabs. Because we worked on Alzheimer, Alzheimer has a lot of coloring right now. It would not look like this when you first start filling in the information. This is because we're digesting it and try to replicate things in Atlas and so forth. So we're going to ask you to report on the author, the citation, the year, the country, the codes used, and this can be copy-paste from whatever in the paper. Other requirement, that means if they did something other than specify anything in terms of the logic, this is where the logic would go. So we're calling it required because sometimes they don't actually state the logic, but there's some requirement. So that's where copy-paste straight off the paper. Exclusion criteria. So sometimes they have additional exclusion criteria. So we're talking about the logic in terms of requirement and exclusion criteria, similar to how it's usually reported. If they report any validation, please paste that in the validation section and just report on the validation metrics. And if there was an age limit in the study itself, please report that. This is sometimes some paper are talking about a certain subgroup. You can post that in the characteristics. Most cases it doesn't exist, but if there's such a thing, please report it. And then copy and paste the abstract. That's it. And then the link of the full text is if it was open access. The additional information that will help us a little bit more, and you can ignore that because this is kind of specific to Alzheimer, is you're gonna give each paper an ID 1, 2, 3, 4. So for each paper, just copy and paste the codes in a structured form so when we start replicating in Atlas, it's an easier task because we can copy and paste the source codes if it was ICD-9 and 10. And just list the code, each code in each raw code, and just tell us what was the vocabulary used. So for example, paper 2 only used the code of DJ30 for Alzheimer, and that was an ICD-10. So it's simply copy and paste the codes in a tabular format and just tell us what the vocabulary was. Sometimes they put the star. In that case, put the star. We're not asking you to copy and paste. So usually they say F039 star. That means all the things that sits under it, just put the star, put it the way it is in the paper. Does that make sense? Okay. So you guys, we're all going to be collaborating on the same document for each of those 5. So this will be a document that many people will be opening at different times. So make sure that you are aware if you start something and not completing it on the same set, just make sure you know where to go back to, because there might be potentially multiple people working on that document, filling it out of the studies that were scanned. Okay, any questions?
As a question, so if they are using like in addition to codes, ICD or read or whatever, and they are using like use of medications and etc., do we put it in the codes or in the other requirements? I think.
Yeah, any codes reported, doesn't matter what the domain or in what way they used it. Please, if they report codes even in certain like requirement, please paste the codes here, and the vocabulary will tell us that this is like this is medication or this is. So use this sheet to report any codes used in the definition, regardless in what form in their logic. So we could. The point of this is for us to be able, when we replicate, to be able to copy and paste instead of needing to reopen all this material in the paper.
Okay, thanks.
But Tamir, most papers when they list out drugs, they usually just list out like the drug names. So so think of that as free text.
Yeah.
Just copy the blob of free text in the first tab. You for the most part, or that second tab really is only if they're explicitly providing structured codes, not the other stuff that would just be descriptions.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's not extra work. You don't need to find the code. If they like that's really the code they reported, if they reported any of any sort. Judy?
Hi. It looked like some of those in one of the examples you showed were a bunch of exclusionary, like not Lewy body dementia, not other kinds of dementia. So you still want those listed in the, even if it's an exclusion thing? Because, I mean, there's a certain component of Alzheimer's being a diagnosis of exclusion. So is that, you just want all of those listed regardless of whether it was used to as a positive identifier, this is the disease, and not this disease? You still want them all on that list, right?
Yeah, yes, because the exclusion criteria will tell us that that was used as a, yes, because we will look at the paper. So yes, so paste them, but the point taken, yeah, sometimes the exclusion will make sure that that is clear in the in the exclusions or in the requirements.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Judy, I think you're raising an important point. So we want to extract out what the papers actually provide. Sometimes they're not always super clear, but when they are, we're going to basically use this record as a thing to say, like, can we actually implement this thing? Can we build it in Atlas? So we want to make sure that we have whatever that logic is. And if we have to go back to the paper, we can, but it'd be nice if we extract out all the things. Also to understand, frequently what happens is maybe they provide the codes for the inclusion criteria, but then for the exclusion, they just like list off a rattled set of words without the codes. But whatever they've got, whatever's there, if we can extract it out, then we can make use of it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Go back to 24, Alzheimer. Okay. The other thing that we're also asking to do, like parallel for each paper, and this is, I think there will be a better way to do this, but since we're doing it for the first time, we decided to try to do it the most, I don't know what the right English term, but the most like crude way. And I'm hoping that maybe we will be able to do it differently. But the idea is we're really trying to understand how the heterogeneity and different way, and maybe actually the common way that people report of the phenotype definition in the paper. And you'll see that paper is different. Sometimes they provide granular information, many times they do not. And we want to try to capture this and digest this. So the way we're asking to create that data right now is literally to go copy and paste the section in the paper that report on the phenotype. Sometimes it's say 5 statements in the method section. Sometimes it is more. Sometimes there's supplementary material. So we try to structure this template to address these possible ways. So all what we need to identify the study is the study number, and that is the study number that exists in that literature review abstraction sheet. So we are able to remember the first one is the article number. So let's keep that article number going. It would be useful if here we have the text, the link to the text of the full article, again, if it's open access. And then here we see in the copy and paste the text in the body of the manuscript reporting the definition used. Usually this is like somewhere second paragraph in the method section. And this is literally the exact, and here's an example where it's we identified patients with AD according ICD-9, blah, blah, blah. So I just copied and paste the exact single text until it finishes. In addition to how they report, there is now at least very common practice that you have at least 5-6 line in the limitation section telling you what they think, how they think the phenotype definition affected or influenced the interpretation or the limitations of the studies. And in that section, sometimes there's where they report about validation or extra work that they did to talk about mainly the measurement error or what they know about the phenotype. So sometimes they don't report any information about the phenotype in the method, but they report extra information in the limitation. So we want to be able to capture that if it exists. If it doesn't, you can just put none. And in that case, for example, here they talk, first, although we selected dementia and AD patients according to physician-recorded diagnosis, it might still lead to the disease misclassification of dementia and AD. To avoid accidental inclusion of miscoded patients, we included slowly. So they talk about their way they took to minimize measurement error that is related to the phenotype definition. So we want to try to capture this information because it's another practice that we want to identify and discuss and maybe recommend on. Other places that sometimes there are extra information about the phenotype definition is supplementary material, validation method, validation metrics. In this case, this paper had none. But if they report, please copy and paste just the text or the information as provided on the paper. As I said, this is like, and then there'll be another section that goes to the second paper and so on. And this can go, so this is gonna go 20 times. And it's, I know it's a lot of copy and pasting, but we're gonna try it. And hopefully we find a better way to try to capture the information as is so we can talk about how people represent the information about the phenotype.
Yeah, I think you just said it, Azza, but just to reinforce, while we don't really exactly know the exact format to do this, that the intent of this is that we know that everybody just describes phenotypes in just very different ways. And I personally have experience like I pull up a bunch of papers and I read this one and then I have to like search for it in a different paper and then I keep doing that. And we were thinking that if we could at least just plop the information in one document, then maybe we'll have the ability to kind of scan through and find the commonalities and differences. If anybody has other ideas of a different way to do it, we'd be definitely like all ears. But ultimately what we want is we want to get the information out of the papers so that then collectively as a group, we can look through that information and try to identify the patterns. We did debate about like, is there things we could guess what the patterns are, but our own experience of trying it convinced us that we're not smart enough to figure that out without looking through them all as a group.
So, yeah, Frey?
Hi, this is Eric Helsinki. I'm just wondering, do you have some sort of checklist? Because there's quite a lot of steps now to extract that information. So it might be helpful just to have a checklist. So if one goes through, say, okay, I've done this, not to forget anything. Can be very simple. Yeah,
so we can add, maybe Anna, on our task on that tracker, we can add like more granular of the literature review abstraction. Did you do the codes? Did you do the added checklist that represent each of the component of these things? Eric, very, very good suggestion. We'll update our task sheet to look like a checklist that will remind people of these steps.
And essentially, aside from that, when you go into the corresponding folder for your condition, you would see the templates for each of the steps. So say, for example, if you are in week 2 for lung cancer and you signed up to do data extraction, there are 2 pieces, as I said, structured extraction and copy paste in the description of the Word document, and you would have the templates for both of the steps. And if it's structured extraction, you will see the columns already populated for you. So you will know that, okay, I need to extract name, I need to extract codes, I need to extract this and that. So right now you have the literature abstraction and the phenotype representation doc file, but of course there will be even more instructions on top of that.
Yeah, we'll provide a checklist. We'll add it to the instruments used. Jamie, did you want to say something? I saw your hands up. Okay.
No, it got covered. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so that takes us to this step. So again, so if you sign up for abstraction of literature, it's technically 2 documents that you will be taking the information out of the paper, filling it in. One is the abstraction, structured abstraction template, and the other one is that unstructured bulb of text that you will be copying. Once this is completed, then for the literature search, we will have another step where we are not dividing and conquering on that step, but this is a step where we're gonna take a small group, and anybody is welcome to join, and we're gonna discuss those bulb of text. So now we're talking to Patrick's point, to digest those variation in how people report on the phenotype. So for example, for Alzheimer, we have a call tomorrow that we're gonna try to look at that text that I copied and paste for Alzheimer and try to see pattern. If we recognize pattern, maybe we will make it easier for the lung cancer, pulmonary hypertension to maybe abstract that information. But for now, for that step, it's you joining a call where people will be looking at that text form, text table, and try to identify patterns of similarities and differences. That will be done for tomorrow for Alzheimer. Okay, this is the literature search steps. So if you want to help us in that form, I hope you got what you need to do. The sign up sheet would be, so the first step, Anna, we did for Alzheimer. For lung cancer, we will need to identify that person that's going to do the very first step of identifying the papers. And we have that person on the call, Asya? Okay, we got it.
If you go to the next slide. So we took, the way we done it is that all of you guys signed up for certain activities. So there are people who signed up for step 1. So we took those lists for corresponding conditions, and we randomly selected people to do this first task. And again, here the first task is to run the PubMed search query and scan the outputs just to get the list of the papers that are relevant. It's not extraction, it's just scanning and saving the output into the Excel spreadsheet for other people to do the extraction. So for week 1, and again, this is just the snapshots of the corresponding folders where you will be able to find the strategy for the lit review and the instructions on how to do that, essentially yet another recap. And we placed the names of the people who signed up to do this task and whom we randomly selected. And I know that 2 people are on the call. Beta and Bolu are here. Hayden is not here, but we texted him. So if you guys are still on board, nothing changed in your nothing changed. If you're still on board, then you can get ahead. Everything is already prepared for you in the folders. You can go into the folders. You can check out the document that describes the steps of the lit review. You can download the PubMed search query and go ahead. And yet again, the output described in the instructions in these folders will be a spreadsheet with the papers that you scanned and deemed relevant. So quite an easy and hopefully not so much time-consuming task.
Okay, so Beta and Polo, you're good? You know where to find
yeah.
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, perfect.
I'm good also. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so we got the first step. So if you were hoping to sign up for the first step because it's the least work, sorry, taken. Okay. So if you want to help us in the next steps for what I went through with the literature review, we will be circulating once that first step is done, and you will receive that task with the papers, and you can sign up your name. And that will happen in the next 3 weeks. But once we're going to try to finish that step 1 for all 3 diseases in the next 2 days, so we get the studies and people can sign up to do the literature review and abstract the information. Then, if you're not interested in literature review and you're still here, because you're interested in Atlas and the tool and everything else, now we're going to talk about what we're going to do next. Okay, so now imagine we have all the literature review done, we have all the information abstracted, we have 20 papers on average with 20 definitions, or maybe some definitions are similar. And our aim is to replicate the definitions, understand what kind of patients do they define. The way we're going to do this is, again, out of that literature review abstract form, we're going to now assign people to replicate the conditions in Atlas. So if you are interested, if you know how to do that, we're going to use Atlas demo that is publicly available for everybody. And your task will be, we're going to create another task sheet that has all the papers that can be replicated. And your task would be to sign up your name for replication 1 of those conditions, go to Atlas, replicate it, use the information in the literature review abstract where you have the codes and you have the logic, where you have the link if you didn't fully understand and you need more information from the paper itself. And you go ahead and you replicate that in Atlas. Once you replicate that in Atlas, you go to the task sheet, which I will go over, and you just put the ID of the Atlas, the cohort definition that you created to cover a replication of that definition from the paper. Does that make sense? Okay. After you create, you just put the ID, and that tells us that you're done. We have replicated Atlas definitions. We're gonna go. One of us will go and QC and just make sure that we don't have any bugs, and just finalize that. Then Jamie Weaver gonna create a package that includes cohort diagnostic and fee evaluator that includes those cohort IDs that you all guys created, that can be shared with the community to run cohort diagnostic and fee evaluator. This is where, and we're going to use the forum post, not the forum and the working group teams to announce that. So once we have a package ready for Alzheimer, we're going to announce that we have a package ready for Alzheimer. For those who are interested in trying to run cohort diagnostic and plus fee evaluator, they can take the package from Git and try. Our person for that activity is Jamie and Joel. And that, if you are a data partner who is interested in running fee evaluator and or cohort diagnostics. So again, where would you find that information? It will be posted. There will be a forum post. There will be post on the teams that gives you the information of the package. every disease is going to have its own package, and your task will be to figure out how to run this in your own data source. Okay, then, so that's coming for Alzheimer at the end of this week. Once we have the cohort diagnostic run, Phe-evaluator run on Friday calls every Friday at 9 o'clock, and we'll see if we need to change that for people who are contributing. We will be doing two things. We will be demoing, one of us will demo one of the definitions that were created in Atlas from like as a demo. So if you are just here, if you want to learn how we did the definition in Atlas, you join that Friday call, and in there we're going to pick the most sophisticated definition in the literature that we replicated, and we will do this as a demo and for everybody to watch. That's going to be half an hour. The second half an hour, we will have cohort diagnostics results for the whole set of the cohorts that were replicated. We're expecting about in Alzheimer, there's about 6 of them because we found many papers, but well, we had all these papers and they went down to about 27 papers in the last 4 years. Then from those, we end up with 16 papers that actually reported on phenotypes. And then from those, I identified 6 because some definitions were very, very close to each other's. So we can limit that universe depending on the condition. That's every disease on its own. But we're expecting something from 6 to 15 or more definitions. That may be a judgment call that we'll make to make how much variation we can skip. Okay. Then we're going to have cohort diagnostics results because we will have run it in internal data sources while others run it in the other data partners. And we will be able to review the results of how different these people look using different definitions. We're going to do this over the second half of the call. And if you're interested in that part to dig more deeper, there'll probably be people who will take lead into writing this down, going deeper, but we're going to use half an hour to just look at the count, look how different the characteristics are, look how much overlap. And then depending on what we see, we might build certain visualization that can go to a paper that summarize across the diseases. But on Friday afternoon, that should conclude the steps for each definition, for each disease, at least using J&J data sources. We can add data sources as people are able to run and add their results from cohort diagnostics and Phe-evaluator. The last thing is on Tuesday call, we will give a summary of what we found in the literature, how we are able to replicate so far. On Tuesday, we will not be done. Like tomorrow, we're not done with Alzheimer yet. We're kind of 4 days lagging, but we can report on what we found. And next week, when we talk about lung cancer and our progress, we can talk about the full findings for Alzheimer and so forth. 4 minutes left. Do we have, yeah, this is the task sheet. And this is just the data extraction. Okay, Chris.
Hey, thanks so much. This is great. Quick question. When we take phenotypes from the literature and convert them to Atlas, as mentioned, because there's not always a lot of granularity there, I imagine 5 different people may do that 5 slightly different ways. Is there a place you want us to document kind of the assumptions made in building out that Atlas phenotype, or should we just kind of use our best judgment?
Well, that's a great question. I think we need to make some document some assumptions. Let's see, what's the best way to do that?
I want to use the description section in the Atlas definition.
Yes. So
I think that's a good idea.
So in Atlas,
you can go to the Atlas
Yeah, because we don't have so much time, so I'm just gonna quickly show where the description section. Maybe Atlas demo will open faster than Atlas TNJ. Okay, so you see that space here? That's an open text. So I think here we can talk about like which paper, can put the link, and you can report any information you want to report about assumptions or what the logic you perceive, anything. Let's open a text and leave it for the developer. Okay. Asia?
As I was just saying, maybe like if along this anyone has questions, do you recommend people to use Teams, or if you want to like, hey, like what do I do now? Like pinging people.
Yeah.
For everyone
So the best place is the phenotype, because everybody is now in the working group of the phenotype working group. The best place is that posts right here, where you can put any question, tag anybody. To help manage the work, anything related to Alzheimer, you're ready and you want to do something for Alzheimer, ping me. Anything you're ready and you want to help in lung cancer, Asia is your person. You're ready and you want to help in major depression, Anna is your person. And you're ready and you want to help in pulmonary hypertension, all of us is any of us is your person. Or Jamie, or yeah, it's because we're still down the road, but yeah, so ping here, use the post here, that is the best place, that's where we all can see. If you prefer to speak to people versus post something on the public, reach me for Alzheimer, reach Anna if you want to work specifically for major depression, reach Asia if you want to work on lung cancer, and reach me again if you want to do pulmonary hypertension. Patrick?
I was just going to add one thing that I've found that I've had to go down in the rabbit hole a little bit is sometimes papers will say we used a definition as previously validated in whatever, and then they don't actually provide the algorithm. They provide a citation that you then have to trace down to get to the algorithm. I guess just as a general practice, or maybe it's a question for you, Azza, but I guess I'd suggest maybe like, if you can go down the rabbit hole, like don't kill yourself and going everywhere, but if you can at least get to the algorithm, and if there's anything that you want to like just comment about, like how tricky it was. You posted those 3 examples, and I just did the rabbit hole exercise with the third one, and it's fascinating because it cites a website that provides 2 definitions of the same idea. And so it's not actually immediately obvious which one it's referring to. So those kinds of things can and will happen, and be great to be able to expose those as part of the storytelling here.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. The general rule, Patrick says, if it's taking you more than 20 minutes on a paper, skip it. that we're not trying to do a systematic literature review. We're not trying that. We're saying from papers we could identify this is what we're reporting. So, but general thing we try to do, if there's a paper that had a full validation in it, try to reach that and report that, even if it's not within the last 4 years. So like there are few of papers that are full validation of particular algorithm, and many people reference those. If you're able to reach that paper, then forget about anything that it referenced and go and find abstraction of that particular paper, even if it goes 10 years ago. So in Alzheimer, that's a great example. Everybody referenced Imfield, and there's 2 papers of Imfield with completely 2 different definitions. And it's very confusing. But I ended up adding 2 Imfields because that's what everybody referenced. Okay, we're past time. But everybody is clear. So I think we have it. So you'll see a call for tomorrow to go over that bulb of stuff for Alzheimer, which will be a fun, unstructured, unclear, unplanned activity that we will go through. And if you want to watch how messy we're going to be, you're welcome to join. Okay? And help Asia form her team and get all those studies that Haider will come out with. So Asia can have lung cancer, non-small and large small or non-small, small cell and non-small cell, all figured out.
All the sizes.
Okay. Reach out, anything. We'll see everybody on Tuesday call or
Thanks.
tomorrow. You're welcome.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.